Glocks are popular, no doubt. Also popular is to individualize your things, including, of course, Glocks, or especially when it comes to Glocks. And this has two important reasons. First, Glocks are functional, and that's how they look like. There's no particular style or anything put on just for the looks. Everything that is on is there because it's needed for this gun to work. Second, there's a ton of aftermarket support available for Glocks, not least because these guns are popular and do look rather simple. Keep it in your safe. Do not just buy the gun and keep it in your safe, or worse, just carry it. Train with it, as only the right training ensures that you know what to do when push comes to shove. Attend classes, and even more importantly, test different ammo. Find out which rounds shoot well through it, and stick to them. This includes practice and defensive ammo. Zero your gun and maintain it regularly. Test your magazine, your sights, and your new trigger. The trigger. Don't keep the factory trigger on your Glock. While it is reliable and the gun goes bang every time you pull it, it's also creepy. On the upside, it's the same creepy feel whenever you pull it, so it gives you consistency. After a long, gritty pull, you get an equally long reset. There are aftermarket triggers available. Choose something with a shorter pull and a shorter reset. This allows you not only to shoot faster, but also to be more accurate. Not unimportantly, it makes shooting more pleasant. This way, you're more willing to go to the range and get your training. Make also sure that you reduce the weight of the trigger pull, but do not make it too easy for yourself. While less trigger weight helps with accuracy, it also increases the chance of a negligent discharge. Most importantly, however, is that a too light trigger makes follow-up shots too easy as well. You might find yourself emptying your whole magazine into one attacker. Well, this is definitely effective in a gunfight, as long as there is only one attacker. You might have problems explaining in court why you fired 15 rounds when 5 or less would have been more than enough. The sights. The factory sights are not wrong, but they're also not necessarily the best you can have. Getting a good picture takes longer, and at longer ranges the accuracy suffers. Use a good red dot to make it even easier to use. It should be at a suppressor height even if you do not use a can. Go cheap. There are aftermarket parts for Glocks from different manufacturers. Some are on the more expensive side, and some are on the other end of the spectrum. When you buy a Glock, you buy quality. This translates most and foremost into reliability. If you buy a Glock, you know it will go bang when you pull that trigger, but when shooting there are a lot of failure points. For example, a weak spring in a magazine can lead to feeding issues. This means that you have to ensure the same quality in the aftermarket parts that you buy as Glock puts into the gun. If you go cheap, you get stoppages or worse. The gun will not fire at all when you need it, so don't go cheap. Rifling up. Your Glock is a handgun. Accept that. It's also not a submachine gun. Do not try to turn it into one. These are, of course, parts out there that are able to give you that, but try to withstand the temptation. If you want, you can put on a brace or stock, but be careful about the legal implication. Add a magazine holder in front of the trigger guard and a suppressor. You got yourself a nice carbine, short-barreled rifle, or submachine gun substitute. What is the problem with that? Well, weight, size, reduced maneuverability. You bought a handgun to have a handgun. You want a submachine gun? Buy one. Same when it comes to rifle or carbine. If you do want to increase the utility of your gun by adding extra turning it into something like a carbine, there are complete systems out there that do work quite well. Instead of adding parts here and there, get a complete system. Like, for example, the MCK or a Recover Tactical. They give you a stable platform with further options like mounting sights. Flash hider. There are handguns out there that are better described as hand cannons. Those might from time to time come with some ports at the muzzle to counter the effects of recoil. That makes sense also. If you have a rifle, attaching a flash hider makes also sense. Having a Glock and attaching something like this, however, does not only make no sense at all, it also looks hideous. It also makes your handgun heavier and longer. What about the effect? That's best described with the word zero. Apart, of course, from the light weight that might actually counteract the recoil somewhat. Lights. A good gun for home or self-defense should come with a light attached. This allows you to identify someone before you shoot. Not everyone in your home might be a burglar. Sometimes it's just a loved one or even a neighbor. With a good light, you get a chance to make sure that it's actually a bad guy you're shooting at. Agreeing that lights are a necessity, there's also, of course, something we can describe as fitting to the gun. That does not just mean to attach it, but to actually fit the size of purpose. There are some very good tactical lights that can be attached and activated if your gun has the appropriate rail, typically in front of the trigger guard. Not fitting is to use a scope ring and attach a flashlight. It's not fitting because a scope ring is meant for attaching a scope to a rifle. Furthermore, a flashlight's just oversized for a handgun. And finally, you might have a problem to activate it when you actually need it. That's actually not even finally yet, as you might have to put out with some weight that is not supposed to be there. If you aren't stuck with a flashlight and a Glock, there are better ways. Use the flashlight independently. Rest your gun holding hand on the forearm of your weak hand and hold the flashlight in your weak hand pointed forward. Either way, it is better than somehow engineering this light under your Glock. Keeping a light on your gun is recommended, but keeping a flashlight separate is equally recommended. Think about the following situation. It's dark. You go to your car in the parking lot. There's a guy looking for the keys he dropped on the ground right next to your car. In order to identify him, you use your flashlight. Believe me, it's much better in that situation to use the flashlight without simultaneously pointing the gun attached to it at the guy. Paint your Glock. Okay, Glocks look alike, but so do other things. There are companies out there that do offer Glocks in different colors, but the available options are not only limited, but also underwhelming. If you want to individualize a Glock and actually make it your own special little gun, why not start with a paint job? If done with taste and within the limits of reasons, why not? But if you produce something like the Block 19, a gun looking like made from Lego, you just cross the line. Some might be offended because it would invite kids to play with it, or to get into shooting. Others are offended because it makes a beautiful gun look like a toy. While the argument of persuading kids to like guns is not really valid, thanks to a ton of gun-oriented video games, there is some validity when it comes to making a gun look like a toy. While it seems like fun, kids might be tempted to play with it, or even grown-ups might handle it in a way that contradicts safety rules, all because it just looks like a toy. Then there's the reality of self-defense. Draw a gun on an attacker, you often enough scare him away alone with that. That means you're not forced to actually shoot and go through all the legal hurdles coming with that. However, draw a Block 19 and your attacker might also think that it's something actually made from Lego. The scare effect is lost, and you end up actually shooting. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot paint your gun. Of course, you can and should. You can even blame it on the company or the government. Why? Because often enough, the finish wears off. That's either the fault of the company itself using something not strong enough, maybe to cut costs, or the government with their regulations banning Glock from actually putting on what they want. Either way, you might be forced to take paint to keep the beauty of your beloved gun intact. Just keep it within reasonable limit and avoid the appearance of a toy. Conclusion. Your Glock is a defensive tool. When you call on it, your life is on the line. Honor your gun. Do not put things on it that keep it from working properly. Maintain it and train with it. And get a good trigger and sights. Make sure it works, and it'll be there for when you need it.